Hello, welcome everybody. My name's Frankie. I'm Communications Director for All the Elements, and I'm so excited to welcome you to the Resilient Community Series 2026. The Resilient Community Series is an event run in partnership between All the Elements and the YHA Outdoor Citizens with support from Sport England. The series is entirely based on the feedback that you share with us, and this year we're focusing on funding. This first session, we're going to be looking at how to get paid, getting started with core funding with funding expert Sam Davis. Sam brings first-hand experience from all corners of the sector. She's a fundraiser, a funder, and a charity leader. Let me just pause to add somebody else in. There we go. Sam's joining us through Get Grants, who are a UK-wide fundraising consultancy who offer practical support, information, and training that fundraisers with all levels of experience can take away and put into practice. And with that, I think that's all that I need to say to introduce the session. So I'm going to stop sharing. And Sam, I'm going to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Frankie. And hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I will just apologise. My voice is a little bit on the low side. I'm just on the outskirts of a bit of a cold, so apologies that I'm a little bit on the nasal side. But I will do my best to get through this evening with strepsils and water. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm going to share my presentation. Hopefully, this will come through. Okay. Is that okay? Everyone see that okay? Hopefully that's a yes. Brilliant stuff. Okie dokie. So as Frankie said, my name is Sam. I'm going to be delivering the training this evening. And really this is just about kind of getting you to think about what you need to put in place in order to kind of take your organisations to the next step in terms of sustainable funding for the really valuable work that you do. So we're going to cover some ideas and kind of maybe challenge your thinking a little bit in some different ideas and different ways, inspire you to think about something a little bit different in order to sort of bring in those funds. So as Frankie said, we've got a packed sort of schedule this evening, a packed hour to get through. So we're going to look at sort of, first of all, transitioning from that kind of project-based funding more to that kind of core funding element. We're then going to look at some diverse income streams. None of these will be sort of new information for you, hopefully, but it's going to get you thinking a little bit about some different ideas that maybe you'd thought of, but maybe they've gone to the back of the list. They're not something that you're thinking of actively, and it might just kind of inspire you to think about them again. We're going to then look at some real examples from organisations that have done things a little bit differently to bring in those funds. And then we're going to look at kind of the pros and cons, what might work for your organisation is not going to work for another and vice versa. So, there will be hopefully something in here for everybody that you can all take away as a practical approach and really kind of apply it to your organisation. So just to kick us off using that chat box then. So I just want you to drop in a sentence or two that describes how you currently feel about charging for your time and those core costs. So I might read out a few if we get some good ones, but just kind of explain. Do you feel awkward asking for money? What do you think are the main challenges about charging for your time? I'd just be really interested to kind of know who we've got in the room really, and just give me an idea of kind of how we're feeling currently. And I will bring up the chat box so that I can have a little look. Sarah said uncomfortable, awkward, not confident yet. Guilty, that's an interesting one, isn't it? Feeling guilty about charging for your time. Nadia said justified. Yeah, another, we've got both sides of the spectrum in terms of we feel awkward asking for it, but also we know that we need to be paid for it. So there's a bit of a kind of an internal conflict perhaps for a couple of us there. What else have we got? Funders don't always value the time that goes into stuff other than project delivery, which makes it even harder to ask. Yeah, absolutely, Joss. Yeah, I think they're all really, really valid points in terms of how do we position that to the funders? How do we really help them understand what we do, and finding the right fund really that is gonna fund us. Yeah, because a lot of them are kind of delivery or kind of new project costs, and then it's like, how do we weave that in? You know, our time is also valuable. Yeah, great. Thank you so much, everyone. Keep them coming in, because I'm really interested to kind of read more about kind of how you guys are feeling, and what you're thinking about it. And hopefully this will help kind of reposition in your mind, sort of from that feeling awkward or feeling guilty to actually feeling that confidence that you are absolutely more than justified to charge for your time, and this is how we're going to go about it. In terms of kind of the lived experience that you guys have got, and those kind of deep community connections, they're highly valuable, and they're sought after. So, you know, I really kind of challenge you to shift that mindset from kind of not seeing seeing the niche, as opposed to like not seeing those transferable skills. You know, we've all got those transferable skills that can be applied to multiple scenarios. So, you know, we're sort of, we need to think of ourselves as commodities essentially, and really value what we're doing, and how we can package that up and sell it, because essentially that's what, you know, when we're asking for funding, we're selling our organization. And it's how we do that which is going to be the strength in our application, or whatever else we're looking at doing. Okay, thank you ever so much, everyone. It's really interesting to find out a little bit more, so that's absolutely great. So first of all, we're going to look at that transition. So thinking about kind of thinking more kind of strategically about the future of our organisation. So calculating that kind of true cost of running our organisation. And I think a lot of the time, I think that we don't really think about what goes into that sort of true costs. Okay, we've got that idea of kind of, well, we spend this amount on a venue, or this amount on insurance, or this amount on our email accounts or our Microsoft packages, and we've got that kind of rough estimate. But are we keeping that kind of really running total? You know, so have we documented that from 3 years ago? And can we confidently say now that actually 3 years ago it was costing us X amount to run our organisation, and 3 years later, through cost of living crisis, through increased costs of everything, it actually costs us this now? So that sometimes provides us the evidence, the hard evidence that we need. And by doing that, it helps us think, as I say, a bit more strategically about the trajectory of our costs of our organisation, and therefore where we need to plug those gaps. Okay. It also helps us split those project costs away from the running costs. Okay. And it can help paint the picture a little bit better with the funders. You know, we can say, oh, we deliver X amount of projects, and these are our direct project costs. However, it costs us X amount, which is 15% of that, which is our core running cost. And this is what it takes to run our organisation. Mm. It starts to then to sort of start to tell the story of the impact your organisation has, rather than you feeling like you're having to kind of relive that message every time you apply for something different, or have a conversation with a corporate sponsor, or, you know, that kind of thing. We're not having to reposition anything. It's very much that narrative of, this is what it costs to deliver our projects. But actually, those core costs, they don't disappear. In fact, they actually increase, right, year on year. And, you know, without this can't happen. So I think it's around kind of using that as the story to tell. Okay. In terms of moving away from securing those kind of project specific money, we need to keep our organisation alive. You know, we need to really demonstrate that, as I say, without this happening, without this support, this cannot happen either. Okay. So in order to sort of calculate that, it'd be interesting to see whether any of you have anything like this listed, and whether it's up to date. This is obviously just a very kind of basic example, but this lists everything in terms of your true costs. Okay. Wages, marketing, equipment purchase, hire, web design, insurance, light, heat, office, staff training, all of those things that we are spending every single year they never go away. Some of them might fluctuate, you know, you might spend more on staff training one year, less on another, you know, more on travel, less on another. Excuse me. It'd be interesting to see, do you guys have this? Is this something that you've already got? If not, I would encourage you to have a look at listing those things, you know. It'd be good exercise just to see the gaps and see what is funded through which channel. Are you skimming off a top line from funds and going, oh, well, we'll take a little bit from there and we'll take a little bit from there. And that's what's funding our venue hire, you know. Sometimes it's really easy to get, and we've all done it, I've done it, it's really easy to get swept up in kind of, oh, we'll take a bit from there, we'll take a bit from there, and all that'll plug that gap and that'll plug that gap. But without fully knowing and appreciating exactly how that's happening, it's then really really hard to identify where the gaps are, how big the gaps are, and then how we're going to plug them, because explaining that to a funder is quite difficult. So, as I say, if you haven't got something like that, that might be a good place to start, just to see kind of where things are being funded from currently. This is then a kind of example income. So you've got there in terms of trading income, fundraising, individual giving. Yours might be different. You might have other channels of income. You can have your confirmed income, and you can have your anticipated income, funds that you have applied for, conversations that are ongoing, stuff that maybe you've got an individual giving target for the year. You anticipate £5,000, that can go in anticipated income. Through doing that, then you can then start to see where things are coming from, you know, where, and again, if you've got that, it can always be attached to funding applications. It can be attached to other conversations that you're having, where you're saying, you know, we've got this coming in, that coming in, and that coming in. We're anticipating that this is going to come in. We've applied for X, Y, and Z. However, we still identify a shortfall here, or, you know, this is our forecast income. I think bigger organisations, bigger funders, they love seeing this, because it shows that you're really thinking, and you're really thinking about the sustainability of your organisations. It also shows that you've got that diverse stream, and we're going to cover that in a little bit more detail later. But it shows that you've done your homework. And I think by just getting it all down, this is all be in your heads, I'm absolutely positive, but by getting it all down on paper, and having that, you can go, oh, we've really not thought about this. This is going to be a gaping hole in 12 months' time. And it allows you to do that planning, and it allows you to really think ahead and be really proactive with stuff, which, you know, is never a bad thing. And it will just highlight some of those questions that you might have, your board might have, your management committee might have, and it just helps paint that picture in a little bit more detail. Okay, so that's another good little exercise for you to document as well. A value proposition. So essentially, for your organisations, it's that clear, concise statement explaining the specific social problem that you solve and your specific approach, why you do it in that way. And that might be your geography, that might be your stakeholders, that might be something that you choose to deliver in a certain way because of your beneficiaries, etc. And why donors should support you over other organisations. It really helps with that engagement with stakeholders, and it really does demonstrate that impact as well. So again, another really kind of helpful exercise that you might want to take away from today is to start thinking about kind of that unique approach that you have, and really, you know, why do you exist? Ask yourself the why. For donors, what this does is really kind of, it connects to that tangible impact that you have. You know, it's credibility through data, through storytelling, and it really inspires action. And I think organisations that have got that really strong emotive narrative really are successful, because they can tell their story in a way that connects with people. And there's a couple of examples coming up later in the slideshow where, you know, you'll have maybe heard about them, but it's because they're emotive. It's because they really tell that story. So that organisation is not saying, this is what our organisation does and this is how much we need to operate. That's not how they sort of market themselves. It's not how they connect with stakeholders, connect with donors. It's very much, here's why we exist and here's how we solve our social problem, our social issue, and here's why we do it that way. Because it sets them apart. It's their unique selling point, it's their business pitch, it's their elevator pitch, where that then starts to set them aside from other organisations that are maybe doing similar work, maybe working with similar people, but there will be something, there will be a USP about your organisation. It might be the person that founded it, it might be their story. What is it about your organisation that is truly different and truly unique? Because that is what's going to help you with this value proposition. So when you're having these conversations, it might be something that you want to put on social media, want to put on a website, want to use in, and I encourage you to do that as well. That's what's going to get you recognized. It's what's going to make those conversations really easy when someone goes, oh, what do you do? Or why do you do that? You can go, well, actually, let me tell you, we do it because X, Y, and Z, because you've got that ready, you've got that kind of case for support, and it's gathered and it's there and it's, ready to go, ready to attach, ready to use. In terms of kind of, you might want to look at kind of why does it work that way? Is it because of research? Is it because of a specific methodology? Is it because of the reach that you have? Is it the people that are involved and the way they work with people? We will all know examples of people that work with people in certain ways. It really appeals. And that's why more for, oh, come along, I'm going to this great group. Or, we all know people that are really engaging in that way. So is that your USP? Is that what brings people in? Is that what keeps people? Is that what retains people too? It might be the efficiency that you solve those social issues as well. Is it something where someone enters it at point A and when they leave at point B, they've had this amazing journey? And can you pinpoint why that is? Okay. So what appeals to your target market the most? And if you don't know who your target market is, again, that might be a good little kind of exercise or something for you to think about. Is that something that, I think the temptation is it's, oh, we're here for everybody. And you absolutely might be open access. It might be something that you're we don't turn anyone away, and that's absolutely great. And I'm sure a lot of you are in that position. But if you look through your data of the people that are attending, is there a common thread that runs through? Are they all a particular age bracket? Are they, from a particular geographical location? Are they from a specific ethnicity? Is there something that threads through that you can then kind of go, well, this is, our provision is really popular with this specific group? And ask them, why does this provision appeal to you the most? What is it about what we offer that is really, that you find really valuable? Because that might be a bit of a golden nugget as to something that you can really market and really kind of go, okay, cool, we can really play on this then, and really sort of go, really highlight it and show those tangible results of your work. The other thing as well is to kind of highlight what difference a donor's money would make. It needs to be meaningful, it needs to have purpose. So when you're engaging with stakeholders, engaging with donors, we really need to show almost what would happen if we didn't have your money. What happens without our provision? Is there a big gap in our local area, or the issues that we help with? So that's something to really bear in mind as well. And a value proposition doesn't need to be war and peace. It doesn't need to be this massive document that's going to take you months and months to write. But it just helps you get down on paper exactly what you're trying to solve and why you exist. Okay. So again, little bit of homework, little bit of something practical that you can apply. But it will go a long way when you're speaking and engaging with funders and donors. Okay, I think we're good on time. I think we're there. Okay, we're going to talk about income streams a little bit now. So, in terms of your income streams, and again, use the chat box. What are your current income streams? Because again, I'd be interested to see kind of where you're currently accessing your funding. And I've got a couple of examples myself, but I'm interested to see grant funding and some traded income. Great. We've got a little bit of diversity there. That's brilliant. Private donations, okay. Partnerships, sponsorships, ticket sales. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, great. Some really good ones. Grant funding comes up a lot. I think there's a big sort of um there's a lot of people that rely heavily on grant funding, and that's absolutely what I'd expect to see. Volunteer match funding, event participation fees. Yeah, absolutely. So we're all, which is brilliant, and there's a really diverse range there in terms of if there's maybe something you haven't thought of, it's probably in the chat box there is maybe something else you could think of. Um, and apply to yourselves. So um, there's some here. So kind of where else can we look? Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. Obviously, that we're going to talk about kind of embedding those costs within projects. There's some others here which you may not have thought of, but there's a couple here that I kind of encourage you to go and research a little bit and see whether it's for you. So things like consultancy and training, that can be really, really great for kind of local businesses. So things like charging organisations for training in your area of specialism. Do you work with children and young people in a specific way, forest schools or something that's really specific with children and young people? Is that something that you can approach schools about and go in and charge for your time to do that? Is there, do you have a safeguarding expert within your organisation? Sustainability topics, really kind of popular at the moment in terms of being out in nature and that sustainability and that kind of climate change conversation. Is there anyone that you could say, right, we've got specialism here, we're going to look at that as an option to go into other organisations, do that training? You can do 1 hour workshops, you can do half day, you can do full day. There's lots of different options with what you can do with that sort of thing. So there is that option there to sort of charge for your expertise, charge for your specialisms, because they are highly valued and they are sought after. We've just got to find the right people. Individual giving. So, a lot of people mentioned it there in terms of ticketing events and things like that, suggested donations. Your group might organise walks or festivals or things that can be ticketed. And I think if you're not already charging for those, absolutely charge for those. It can be, a small donation. It doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be big. But I think sometimes there is and we've all done it where something is free and you almost question the value of it because you think, oh, well, it's free, so why they're not charging for that? Whereas if we're charging for something, we're placing that value on ourselves. So sometimes that can give the impression that we're paying for value. And we've all done it where we've took the kids to the pumpkin farms at Halloween, and like they are extortionate, some of those, when we go to the farms and we pay for the Instagram photos essentially, and that they're so expensive. But they don't have a problem because they are corporates that are running those organisations and they know the value that people will pay. And I think sometimes, not taking all the leaves out of their book, but we absolutely need to take some of the leaves out of their book sometimes, that we need to be thinking about kind of where we can charge, and really making our time worthwhile and making it pay for itself. I think that's the important thing as well. We do not want to be running at a loss. We don't want to be running where we're relying on volunteer time. So that's something to really bear in mind as well. Digital fundraising is also a really kind of maybe different one, maybe something that you've maybe not thought of before, but virtual events that you charge for, social media campaigns, and we're going to look at an example later on. Crowdfunding, online giving days, so you hold it like an event as like a giving day, and because it's online, it's obviously really, really low cost. But you run that as some sort of event, is there something that you can give to the people that sign up to that? And that kind of thing. We've all heard of obviously corporate fundraising, corporate donors, that kind of thing. And social prescribing might be something that we've maybe not thought of. But social prescribing was a thing probably pre-COVID and has now started to gain a little bit of momentum. It can normally be accessed through like your primary care network, so the doctors and things like that, where they will refer people to you through their systems where people are on sort of low level mental health and that kind of thing. And so that's another idea of how you could kind of have a bit of a referral channel. So that's just a couple and again, some of these might not sit well with people or feel a little bit uncomfortable, or I don't really want to try that, but I sort of would encourage you to look at a couple of different options if you've not already thought about them. Okay. So when you're embedding your overheads into a project cost, there's a little bit of a kind of, I wouldn't say a science to it, but if they don't explicitly say to not do it, then do it. Okay. We want to be working this out at 10 to 15% of your overall cost. Okay. You add this on directly onto your direct expenses, and then it gives that total. Okay. So obviously we need to be prepared to explain how the percentage was calculated and why you believe it's fair and reasonable. But 10 to 15% is more than fair and reasonable. Okay. Don't avoid kind of underfunding your overheads as well. Okay. Some research about doing this. If we underfund, it's essentially where it needs to be a fair percentage of the project. If we underfund it, essentially we're saying, the first thing to go is we'll cut our costs. And then that has that kind of negative effect of going, well, we can't perform effectively if we don't have enough to run. And all that does is chip away at the funding that we need to run. Okay. A really kind of basic example of how we would do this is the direct cost of your delivery times your overhead at 10%. Okay. So if we had a £10,000 project with 25% overheads, that's 2,500. Your total will be 12,500. And it's as simple as that. If you've got X amount, we take that percentage, we add it onto the direct project costs. Okay. And as I say, if they're not explicitly saying you can't do that, absolutely be doing that. Okay. And I think more and more funders are understanding that, in order to run those projects, everything else needs to happen in the background as well. You need to be insured. You need to have, internet. You need to have, you need to be paying your staff. So I think funders are coming round to the idea more so. But yeah, my sort of advice there is kind of don't underfund yourself. Really be quite explicit and confident that that's what you need to run. Okay, as well as the project that you're asking for. I'm going to have a look at the chat box just in case something has come in. We'll have a look at those at the end. I was just looking at if there was anything specific, that's fine. Lovely stuff. Okay, so on the subject of kind of that like personal branding, essentially, again, pop it in the chat box. I'd love to know, can you or anyone in your team offer any expertise to larger organisations? So whilst you guys are popping it in the chat box. So an organisation I used to work for, we had an ex PE teacher, an ex primary school teacher. So he was, our organisation was working with children and young people, and he was trained in Team Teach. We then used that his expertise because he was trained in Team Teach, and we trained other non-profits in group sessions, and we charged those workshops. And that's one example of something that he's brought from his teaching experience and from his other work, and he's brought it into our organisation, and we've gone, cool, that's great. We can charge X amount for that workshop. You know, that's how you're being charged, and we're going to charge the rest. That is how we've got to look at it, because we need to cover everything, and we need to see what can be offered to other organisations. There will be local businesses who, you know, want to get their teams out in nature. You know, can anyone lead sessions and get paid for that? It's really good corporate social responsibility for businesses to do things like that, volunteering days and that kind of thing. Businesses love that kind of thing. So if you are offering that, approach businesses and organisations as something that you can offer, and your value proposition will really help with that, because there's a story along, there's a narrative along with that. Things like, obviously, you know, if you've got forest school leaders within your organisations, you know, can you provide health and safety consultancy for councils? Is there any kind of consultancy that you can do for other organisations, schools and things like that, that is based around that topic? Are there speaker sessions or opportunities that you can tap into locally or regionally? Think of your experience as value, because organisations will pay for that. Great stuff. So hopefully that's got you thinking about some of the skills within your organisation and how you can maybe offer those to other organisations and get paid to do so. Great. So just moving on to some kind of real world applications then. So where other organisations have done this. So these are bigger organisations, and I'd be really keen to hear if you guys know of any local or regional organisations that have done something a little bit differently and maybe applied one of these logics or you know, a different tactic, and just, you know, thought a little bit outside the box. Obviously, these organisations all started where you were. Okay, they all started as small organisations with, you know, limited staff maybe, or really trying to kind of do more. And actually, in order to grow, they've had to go through what you're going through now. But this is just a couple of different examples here. So some of you may have heard of St Mungo's. They're a charity that's focused on ending homelessness. They operate a commercial training arm that does kind of vocational courses in horticulture and other trades. So they've done a project called Putting Down Roots. And they basically sell professional training services and then high quality products, so things like plants and landscaping services, to the public and corporate sector. So this is, you know, something that the actual charity and the social enterprise of St Mungo's works with homelessness. But actually what they've done is look at maybe one of those things that have really helped the people they've worked with, and they've got this whole other arm, Putting Down Roots, where, you know, they're selling that kind of training services model, and they're sending teams out and things like that. It's all subsidised. So the profit generated from the sale of the training and the services and things like that fund this Putting Down Roots program, okay, for homeless individuals. It helps them gain skills, helps them rebuild their lives, and then return to work. So there's, hopefully we can see that really kind of circular, you know, that's kind of circular economy really, of kind of, you know, really reinvesting back in and taking something that on the surface, it's, you know, it's probably a sidearm that they've done as a project with their beneficiaries, that they've gone, this really works, and this is something that's got traction and got legs. So actually what we're going to do is make something, you know, big of this. We're gonna really take that. And as you can see there, in 2022, they went to the Chelsea Flower Show, and, you know, they've managed to get those kind of corporate sponsors on board and really build on that. and it just feeds straight back in. Okay, so this is obviously a bigger organisation, but we can see how something that maybe started as quite a small idea has really helped and really shaped and really feeds back in there. Okay, so that's one of the kind of real life examples there. And another one here is more of like a digital campaign. So this is Calm, and they have a missed birthday campaign. And this is all around kind of humanizing that. If you've not heard of Calm before, they support kind of support with young people who are suicidal. So by doing this, I mean, this whole campaign was around kind of, would you know what to do if a young person you knew was suicidal? And they did a missed birthday campaign and then put those numbers to it. So you can see there in the last 10 years, 6,929 young people in the UK have taken their own lives. What they've done there is kind of, like I say, really humanize that brand and really highlight that people support people, not overheads. What they're doing as a charity is supporting real people with, a real focus and a real social impact. We're not saying, oh, we need your help because we need to fund our insurance to help us run. What they're doing is really highlighting the effect and the impact of the people that they are working with and their beneficiaries. And they're using that kind of storytelling over the more salesy approach. There's lots of video content. It tells that story of care and impact rather than just that kind of asking for money and it feeling, as we said, a little bit awkward, a little bit sort of not, a bit clunky maybe. We're telling the story of a person, a group of people, rather than selling anything. You might want to focus on, I mean, this one focused on kind of the nurses and the staff and the beneficiaries. And in terms of the communication, so it was, there was a real clear like call to action. And it was donations are going toward the daily running of the charity to keep it functional because it needs to be functional because this is what we do. And this is what we do because this is our approach, etc. So we're always asking ourselves the why, okay? And we're not leaving that the consumer, we're not leaving them questioning, oh, well, I don't really know how they do that, or I don't really know why they do that. We're answering all of those questions and we're really telling that story. They did a really kind of or there was something that happened a while ago in terms of, and I'm sure we were all part of it, where it was that no makeup selfie. It was quite a while ago now, I think, but again, that's encouraging supporters to share their own stories. That in turn reduces your cost of marketing because it gains traction by other people doing that work for you, essentially. And that thing about going viral and the thing about it, picking up pace online. Online can be a really terrible place at times, but it can also be great for really spreading that message and really getting that out there. I wonder if anyone's got any kind of specific local examples that you would like to share, or something that where you've looked at an organisation, they've done something slightly differently, or maybe it's not local, maybe it's something else where you've thought, oh yeah, I've seen that online, or I know that they've done some fundraising through X, I don't know whether anyone's got any other examples that they'd like to share quickly, or hopefully that's kind of given a couple of different ideas about how we can maybe approach something differently, and think a bit outside the box. Okay. So the key points there really are around, when we're thinking about kind of how we're going to communicate our story. Essentially, it is a story. It's the story of the impact that we're making on individuals and our beneficiaries. Funders and donors that like the transparency. They don't want to be left asking questions. They like to be told a story. normally the most emotive ones that really stick with you, or the impact on an individual. They're the ones that will stay with you, that you remember. Is there a face you can put to the name? That sort of thing is always really, really powerful. It can help build those partnerships, and sometimes those partnerships take a little bit of time to cultivate. But they can absolutely pay off as well. And partnerships look different. There was a couple there in the examples before we started chatting about this section, where that partnership might look like, well, you support me with X and we support you with Y, and it's kind of transactional in that sort of sense, and there's no money change hands perhaps. But can we build on those partnerships, and can we look at some monetary switching, and actually we can provide this now, we've got this element to our organisation, and actually we would like to trial it out for you guys, but also we would look in this as a form of income. And also stay true to your core mission. I think there's a lot of temptation, and some of you might have felt this a little bit with funding applications, where you've seen, oh well, this is the criteria, and I now need to write my funding application to match what they're looking for, and that can cause that kind of mission drift a little bit. I think the charities and organisations and non-profits that are really successful do stay absolutely true to the core mission. They know their why, they know why they're there, and they know who they serve. So please kind of stay true to that when you're having these conversations or thinking about these ideas. And you're just going to be stretching yourselves even further if you're kind of going kind of off piste. So really do sort of stay true to your core mission. And the last section is kind of looking at those pros and cons. So really thinking about, kind of, as I said at the beginning, there'll be some of these approaches that maybe as I've spoken about them, you've thought that is absolutely not going to work for us. That's not something that really fits our organisation. And there might be some that you thought, oh, I've not thought about that, or oh, we have thought about that. We now need to apply it. So we'll just look at some kind of really brief, like, pros and cons of a couple of these. So obviously you've got kind of embedding those overheads, so really, really easy to implement. You can do it on, as long as it doesn't go against criteria, you can absolutely just start implementing. That's really simple. It's predictable, you know what you're going to get. The challenges are, it can be quite restrictive with the funder rules. If it says, oh, we won't fund X amount of overheads, or we won't fund overheads at all, then your hands are tied, a little bit. They are also, as we've all probably experienced, general grant funding, and it says there around core grants, super competitive. And there might be a bit more in place that you need, that you might not have. So it might create a little bit of extra work in order to get that. Consultancy work, it can be really flexible. You do what you feel comfortable with, okay? And it's all unrestricted. Essentially, your consultancy, they pay for your time or your services, but that then is unrestricted. So, if you're charging more than what your time is, that you're paying, then obviously you've got that unrestricted funds to go back into your organisation. However, it can take that time away from that more like community work that you might be involved with. So you just need to weigh up whether that's something that you're, prepared to do. Obviously, you've got core grants. The benefits, you've got that complete freedom, you've got that stability. If you can secure some core grants, especially multi-year core grants, then absolutely amazing. But as I said earlier, it's highly competitive. And as I say, there might be kind of other things in terms of monetary valuation data, detailed policies. That might be a level that some of you might not be ready for yet. Some of you might be. It depends kind of what level your organisation is at. But yeah, there might be some work that needs to go into that first. And then trading income. So this is, and a couple of us mentioned it earlier, around kind of charging for those like walks, events, things like that we can absolutely charge for. It's immediate cash flow. It's complete control. We have control about how much we charge, what that thing looks like that we're charging for. So we have control over that. it can be weather dependent. You know, obviously a lot of us are doing things outside. We're now in for what, a fortnight of rain. So, you know, that's going to be very weather dependent, and, you know, you risk kind of having an event planned and then not being able to do it. Is that being taken into consideration? And, you know, have we got a contingency? Can we still charge, etc.? So, when we're looking at kind of our current position, all of these things will determine what you might be ready for or capable of right now. So it's a good idea to get that kind of base level now, where you then want to be and what you need to do to reach it. I think the key here in terms of that sustainability is knowing where you are now and feeling very sort of, yeah, I'm really confident. I really know where we are now. I know what my organisational readiness is going to be. I know what my team capacity is. I know, you know, what my team's capability is, and skills and the existing network. We then obviously have got those goals and aims and our strategies and everything in place. That gap there is the how. That's how we're going to get there, and what we need to do to reach it. Okay. Sometimes taking a couple of steps back to realign, recalibrate, it does propel you forward more quickly than if you keep going at the pace you are right now. And I think sometimes that can feel really uncomfortable for us because, you know, having run a charity myself, it can feel really overwhelming. It is very overwhelming. And sometimes taking that, like hitting that pause button and kind of going, look, we are not going to get any further forward unless we hit pause now, recalibrate, you know, and then go again. Sometimes we need to do that. And it's feeling comfortable and confident and justified that you're doing that for the right reasons. So we have been in this boat. I can attest that it is not comfortable, but it's absolutely necessary, and you will grow from it. Yeah, it's just about having that confidence to do it. Great. So in summary, then, all actionable points here. You know, start realistic and just build. Calculate your costs. What are you spending now? Where are your gaps? What do you need to plug? Create your value proposition. Look at that narrative. Look at what you're telling your funders. Look at that impact and who your beneficiaries are. And look at exploring some alternative income streams. It depends on your current position. Don't run before you can walk. But hopefully there's been some really kind of actionable points where we can go away and just think about things a little bit differently, and it's just challenged you to think a bit with a bit more imagination about where we can go and what we can do. And I've absolutely no doubt that there's loads of skills within your teams that will enable you to do these things. It's having the confidence to go and do it. So with that being said, write down one thing that you're going to action after this training, underline it, circle it, highlight it, do whatever you need to do and hold yourself accountable to it. I hope you've found tonight useful. Hopefully there's some questions in the chat box. But I will finish the presentation, just say thank you ever so much. And obviously getting grants, please get in touch with Get Grants. Connect us on social media. Any more information that you need, getgrants.org.uk. And thank you ever so much. I'll be here for a couple more minutes for questions. Thank you.